He thought it was just that. Another one? Another suspicious person? Alone? Silent. Sitting on a bench at Lincoln Park. Black, with an open laptop, tiny earbuds, and something in her eyes he couldn't quite place. She wasn't yelling. She wasn't running. She wasn't doing anything suspicious. And yet, her presence alone was enough to trigger an alert. In less than 5 minutes, the peace of that afternoon shattered. She was already on the ground, already in handcuffs, and he felt in control. But then, the radio buzzed, a cold, firm, unexpected voice, a call that froze him in place, and in an instant, everything changed. What would you have thought if you'd seen this scene? Would you have stood up for her, or would you have stayed silent? Tell us your first impression in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe if stories like this make you think. It was a quiet afternoon in Lincoln Park, one of those days when the trees whisper gently in the breeze, children chase squirrels in bursts of laughter, and adults get lost in their books, their walks, or simply in the warm sunlight brushing their skin. Everything felt in balance, until it wasn't. Officer Derek Morgan was patrolling at a slow pace, unhurried. Coffee in hand, dark sunglasses covering half his face, he walked more out of habit than necessity. To him, this shift was just another uneventful day. But his routine was interrupted by something he didn't expect. Or rather, someone. There she was. Alone on a wrought iron bench sat a black woman. She wasn't homeless. She wasn't a mother with kids. She wasn't someone he could easily categorize. She was different, elegant, with a presence that almost felt diplomatic. In her early 30s, perhaps. A laptop rested on her legs, an earpiece in her ear, her eyes fixed on the screen. She was clearly focused, speaking softly in a language that wasn't English. It sounded like French, or maybe something else. Foreign. And in that moment, something in Morgan's subconscious clicked. No shouting, no chaos. But in his trained mind, unusual had long become a synonym for suspicious. His steps grew firmer, more alert. His hand rested on his weapon, not as a direct threat, but as a reflex, as if simply not understanding someone justified preparing for the worst. He stopped in front of her. "Ma'am, can I see some ID?" he asked with a dry authority. No kindness, no nuance. She didn't flinch, didn't even look annoyed. She slowly looked up, as if weighing every word before she spoke. Her eyes were deep, intelligent, and there was something in her gaze that couldn't be ignored. Control. Control over herself, over the moment. And that was what unsettled Morgan the most. "I'm on a secure call," she said calmly. "Please give me a moment." She didn't raise her voice. She didn't challenge him, but she didn't lower her head either. She didn't apologize. She didn't explain herself. And for men like Morgan, a black woman who doesn't ask for permission is a threat. In that moment, something shifted in the air. There was no violence, but there was tension. There were no screams. But the silence was already heavy, and even if no one else noticed. That calm was just the prelude to a storm. What happened next felt like a silent explosion, a moment of restrained tension that suddenly turned into chaos. No warning, no second words. Officer Morgan yanked the laptop from her hands. He didn't yell. He didn't ask. He didn't wait. It was an impulsive act, authoritative, violent. She, still trying to process what was happening, reacted on instinct. She didn't scream. She didn't hit. She simply reached out to take back what was hers. What held her life, her work, her professional dignity. But that was all it took for him to interpret her reaction as aggression. He shoved her hard. Her body hit the ground with a sharp, inhuman sound. Her arms caught between her body and the concrete, her face pressed against the rough sidewalk of the park. And then, the brutal climax. The snap of handcuffs, a muffled cry of pain, the silence of the world, broken only by the first phones starting to record. "Why are you resisting?" the officer shouted, eyes blazing, as if he could no longer distinguish between order and abuse, between suspicion and paranoia. But she wasn't resisting. Her voice barely escaped, broken by the impact, the shock, the raw pain of injustice. "I didn't do anything." People began to gather, first hesitant, then determined. Phones rose into the air. Cameras were watching. But he didn't stop. He was doing his job. He was in control. He was confident in his power. What he didn't know, what he couldn't imagine, was that the woman he had forced to the ground, handcuffed like a criminal, held more power than he would ever understand. Because in that moment, somewhere else in the world, a secure NATO line went dead. And in just minutes, that interrupted call would set off a chain reaction, one that would shake his life to the core, with no escape, and just when everything seemed under control. When Officer Morgan believed he had absolute command of the situation, his shoulder radio crackled, as if the universe itself had decided to intervene. "Unit 12, this is Central," came an urgent voice. "Stand down immediately. Do not take another step." His body froze. He had never heard that tone from Central before. Not once in his career had they ordered him to stop like that. But before he could respond, another voice came through. Clear, firm, British. A voice that didn't ask for permission. It gave orders that crossed borders. "This is General Elaine Rogers, NATO Strategic Liaison," she said with lethal calm. "The woman you just detained is Dr. Maya Caldwell, Chief Cybersecurity Advisor to the European Joint Command. She is currently working on a critical international security operation." Silence, the kind that weighs, that paralyzes, that announces the end of something or the beginning of something far bigger. Morgan's heart pounded so loud he couldn't even hear himself think. His mind scrambled, desperate for an exit, an excuse, a way to rewind time. "Release her, now," the voice commanded. And then, as if the ground had opened beneath his feet, he looked down. There she was, lying on the ground, in handcuffs, but not defeated, calm, unbreakable, looking him straight in the eyes. There was pain in her face, yes, but also an unshakable strength, a calm that didn't come from power, but from truth. "I told you," she whispered. "No hate, no fear. I was on a secure call." And in that instant, she was no longer the one in handcuffs. He was the one completely exposed, because right there, in front of the park, the cameras, and the entire world, Officer Morgan had just humiliated, assaulted, and illegally arrested one of the most important women in global defense. And the worst part was, this was only the beginning. The video didn't take long to explode. Within hours, it was everywhere. TikTok, Twitter, national news, international forums. Millions watched as a high-ranking NATO official was brutally taken down in the middle of a public park, just for being a black woman. The comments were on fire. This is America in 2025? What if she hadn't had that rank? Where would she be now? This isn't an isolated incident. It's a reflection. The city couldn't stay silent. The mayor went live on national television, pale, tense, forced to say the words that hurt. "We offer a formal apology to Dr. Maya Caldwell, her family, and to every citizen who saw themselves in this injustice. Officer Derek Morgan was suspended immediately. A federal investigation was launched. But to many, that wasn't enough, because the damage was already done, and the world had seen it bleed. And Dr. Caldwell? She didn't run. She didn't hide. She didn't let fear define her. 1 week later, she returned to Lincoln Park, head held high, same bench, same laptop. But this time, something was different. No one approached. No one dared interrupt her. The silence wasn't just silence. It was respect or fear. But Maya wasn't just there to work. She was writing, page after page, with surgical precision. A global report, a bomb made of paper, ink, and truth. A document on systemic racism, on how a badge should never protect the abuser, and how silence is no longer an option. Because that afternoon in the park, it wasn't just protocol that was broken, it was the myth that power is always right. And finally, the world started to listen. The story of Dr. Maya Caldwell is not just another case. It's a mirror, a brutal reminder that even the most educated, the most brilliant, the most courageous can still be vulnerable if their skin is the wrong color. And yes, this time there was justice, because her title protected her. But how many others don't get that chance? How many names are lost in silence because there was no call to save them? This video isn't here to make you angry for a moment and then scroll away. It's here to ask you, what would you do if the next Maya had no title, no backup? Because the fight doesn't end with a case closed. It ends when no person, no matter who they are, where they come from, or what they look like, has to fear for their dignity just for sitting in a park. Until then, we keep telling these stories. We keep raising our voices, because silence will never again be an option.